nervous now. I feel like you made me nervous because you said you were nervous. Now I'm nervous.
2006 or something, so it's coming up.
Whoa, what did you put on, mister?
Let's see.
Can you tell us what you're wearing, please?
I like the shirt, it's better. Go on, blog off then. This is
No,
about
no,
me, not you.
Yes,
Your spot's right here next to me, buddy.
This is about me,
But
not you.
we need to have your
Okay,
after hours drink, or you don't want to?
Yeah, no, I do.
Cheers!
Cheers, I know I've
Thanks
got
for
a
having
plastic
us.
cup.
This is a new location for us. So we're at your apartment. We're super excited to be here. I see some of the skateboards.
Those are my branded skateboards. I just throw my logo on anything I can. The blacks, yeah, was with Quicksilver.
No way.
Wait, can we come look at Heath? Will we come look at Heath with us really quickly? I want to hear about Heath.
Well, that's one of my actually favourite. I think every photographer has one of their favourite sessions that they're sort of very proud of, like standalone editorials or stories per se. And this one was shot for the New York Times Magazine in South End in outside of London in sort of circa 2010 perhaps, maybe before, but we were using these real teddy boys to wear the fashion. It was absolutely one of my favourite
Wait,
shoots.
what are the real teddy boys? Because I feel like you told me this briefly.
Well, it's not a culture that I know too much about, but it's music orientated. It's actually, they were listening to like rock and roll, sort of American 50s culture, but it was like an English take on sort of American pop culture in the 50s, but very sort of with a UK twist. Ooh, I like holding a mic. Hello, hello.
Hello. Hello.
Did we just see you?
Hello, how are you? Are you
I'm
well?
good.
I think I just saw
What is
you.
your name, please?
Winston.
Winston who?
Winston Watt.
So, what are you doing? Are you here on business, or are you?
No.
What is the nature of your business? Are you a photographer?
Are you?
Yeah.
So, welcome back. Another episode of Rodeo After Hours. I'm Lindsay Perper, and I'm having a pinch me moment sitting here with Ben Watts, an amazing photographer that I met, back during the pandemic. And he and Gabby actually has given us probably an introduction better than what I can give you. But they have hosted us today in their amazing apartment, and we're going to just dive right into a lot of, his creative process. And first I want to just ask you, okay, so, I'm seeing Winston's, all of his cameras everywhere. And I'm just thinking, okay, how did you have a dad that had cameras everywhere? Or how did you find yourself getting into the photography world? And don't forget to talk into the mic.
I was never into photography in the early stages. I mean, you mentioned Winston before. He's around it. I wasn't around it. I wasn't not around it either. But I always shied away from taking family photos and wouldn't stick my hand up for that. Had absolutely probably like zero interest in it until I went to college. And took the degree of visual communication. And even then, we had to take photography as a compulsory elective. And I wasn't particularly taken with it in the beginning because it did involve numbers, and I was horrible at maths. So I've immediately sort of equated it with something that was mathematical, involving maths or physics, or something that would go way over my head. So definitely shied away from it. However, once I sort of was able to work out the basic fundamentals and deconfuse it, but make it not so scary. Disarm it, because I felt very afraid of it at first. I got taken by it, and I really, it was something that I, certain things in life when they're a fit, when you see something and you get that feeling about it. Well, it didn't take me long before I absolutely had that feeling, and I became obsessed and very passionate about it. I think the thing that really sort of made it less scary was the lecturer explaining to me how it worked like a human eye, which was more sort of biological than physics, and I was able to sort of grasp that context. Once our lecturer, Bruce Pask, I remember his name, a great guy, great lecturer. It's important if you're learning a craft, the person who teaches it has so much power at their hands to enthuse the student or discourage them. They never intentionally, no teacher will ever intentionally discourage you, but some don't have that X factor power where they're able to make you cast spells and make you become a completely obsessed. And this lecturer was, and everything about him I thought was incredible, and therefore I was very interested in his in what he taught and his method of teaching and how passionate he was, and sort of that definitely helped stoke the passion in me, you know.
Wow, I'm actually shocked to hear that. I feel like this is the first creator that we've talked to that really that academia was the spark to the profession versus kind of this like self-taught thing, which is actually pretty incredible.
That's where I'm gonna sort of like jump in, because I'm 56, so I'm gonna say that it's important, like anything, to build a foundation, and you can self-teach, but there are some things, unless you're taught, unless you have that foundation, where you will come up with challenges and you will be challenged, and you will get put back on the learning curve, whether you like it or not, and you're going to want to hope that the outcome is favorable for you, because if you don't know or haven't learned it, you are vulnerable, and you're still vulnerable even if you do learn it, but the likelihood is less, because we're not if I suddenly said, listen, let's go to a beautiful exotic island, everybody pack your bags, you guys would probably all follow me. But then as we got on the jet bridge, I divulged to you that the pilot was self-taught and had learned how to fly on YouTube. The enthusiasm will become very low. Then I would be very surprised to see any of you on board the plane, but I wouldn't see you because I wouldn't be on board it either. And there you have a great analogy of sort of and that's not to discredit anything, but it's just to put things in perspective and why there are people that teach.
And I think
why they still have a job and will have a job for a long time.
And I think that's an important distinction to make, that, you know, and we're seeing things evolve and change so much in your industry and all of these creative industries, and you're able to fall back on this like discipline versus a lot of, you know, people that are self-taught and it's coming from passion, which that's really cool to hear. I'm confused where you're from, because we have, you know, the Great Britain flags, but I feel
Union
like
Jack.
Tomatoes.
God save the king.
Okay, so but like you, I feel like you're from a few different places, right?
Yes, and that also helps. You know, going into the creative process. If you live in different places as a kid, you may not feel that you fit. You may, like, I have a massive identity crisis. So going, like, I don't know, to an English person, I sound Australian. To an Australian, I sound English. To an American person, where I've lived most of my adult life.
You sound like you're from Staten Island?
Well, I sound like I'm either, they'll just take a wild guess, like Australia or England. So it's just kind of left me in this kind of, situation. But I still, what the takeaway is that, yes, I grew up in England till I was 15, went to Australia for 10 years, then came here for the duration of my life until now.
Okay.
But it's I've had a massive sharing experience of different cultures, and not broadly that different, because, you know, I'm coming from Western countries or whatever, that would be questioned but I've traveled around the world a lot, but been brought up in those sort of quite varied cultures, and I bring that to the table when I'm taking pictures.
Absolutely.
I can draw upon my UK experience. I can draw upon my Australian experience,
Right.
and now I draw a lot upon my American pop culture experience that I have with America, that I'm still
Right.
sort of like very curious about and still deeply attached to. So it's that's a good thing. And when you're growing up and you're changing school and changing location, it can be very harrowing for a young person, because they're like, oh God, I got to make new friends again. Oh God, I got to do this again, do that. I got to settle, grow my roots again, and become, who I am again, and establish some sort of like social sort of movement within, that where my location. And I tended to learn to do that very well, and I think that served me very well in the business I'm in, because it is about communication. It's about visual communication. And I am constantly going into different environments, and I don't feel intimidated by social, cultural, or economic backgrounds or environments. I feel
Right.
very at home and very comfortable, because
Yeah.
I feel like because of my upbringing, I'm able to connect on many different levels and transcend those boundaries, the social boundaries that are right now in this day and age, that we're sort of slowly, bringing them down and lowering them, but they still very much exist and they did definitely growing up.
You are disarming the people that you're around, which I also think is very important as a photographer, that you make people feel comfortable in that way, like whatever the setting.
That's bordering on or going into the photographic process. Yeah, it's absolutely a skill that a photographer, usually will have, or definitely is a skill that I like to pride myself on.
Yeah, and I've seen it live, and I do want to get into that. But before we get into that, I want to talk about, this big break. I mean, before we get to today, I don't know, was there like one big shoot, or, I know that you and your sister both were, rising in this like creative industries.
Right.
Like, were you doing it together? Like, I don't know.
No, definitely we weren't because we would, Naomi's sort of breaks are very much in the entertainment industry, obviously, and mine in the photography world. And to say that her success has not helped mine would not be truthful. Of course it has. Did I rely upon it? Absolutely
No, that was not.
There are people out there that are talented, but have sort of leapfrogged the learning curve based upon genuine relationships that they have with people that are decision makers, and there's no disputing that. Of course, there's going to be a degree of, I guess you'd call it nepotism in some way or other, but it might create one or two breaks if you play that card, but you're going to have to back it up. When you go out into the world to partake in whatever career you wish to, you take along your toolbox, and you say, what do you have in it? What do you have in it? Well, I've got contacts, I got skills, I got passion, I got desire, and I got ability,
And then you have so much creativity. I mean,
right. So you need all those things, because one without the other, you do need you need ability, but then to use that ability and to prove it, you will need contacts.
1000%.
But sometimes people have a lot of contacts, but then their ability might not be up to what it is, but they're able to survive just because they do have passion and they have enough ability to learn as they go to a degree, and then others not so much, and then they'll shrink, and others will take their spot. It's
I think there's a difference
the game of
between like
life.
establishing like a legacy, and I feel like I'm sitting next to something like that. It's like a legacy versus just like a successful career. To me is like a big, I don't know, there's like a big differentiation of that, and like what lives on beyond a career. And I think, a lot of your work to me is going to stand the test of time. But I want to know,
I appreciate you saying that, yeah.
Your big first thing that you're like, we're making it, we're doing this. Like, what is the shoot?
Well, in in Australia, it was working for Australian Vogue. And when I did that, I thought, whoa, this is good. But I was pretty young and very enthusiastic and very caught up in lots of things that I didn't actually, my immature mind didn't think at the time, well, this is great and would mean something special. And I think that served me well because I was more sort of caught in this moving momentum where I just wanted to keep moving rather than stop and say, look what I did, you know.
So hard to just take stock in it as you go.
Yeah, no, it really is. That's a good way. That's a good term to use, which I don't think you should do. I think you keep moving, and the stock you take is in the journey that you take. You don't need to you don't need a moment of sort of being static to appreciate yourself, because yourself
maybe like 1 second. Like,
yeah,
I like
maybe,
to like every
maybe.
like I mean the ladies around here know, like, I rarely am like, today was the biggest day, but there
I
are days
think
where I'm
that's
like,
different,
can we
because
just all just take note that, you know, Ben Watts is doing a photo shoot for us, or, you know, for 2 seconds, we're not like sitting and like kumbayaing about it, but
Well, then you'd be in the Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever, wouldn't you, if you were kumbaya? But so I.
okay, so it was Australian Vogue was kind of like the first big thing.
That was a pretty good milestone for me, and it was a pretty big deal, and I was like one of the first new photographers that they'd used in a long while, so it was for them too. And then the woman who is now that was then editor of the magazine, who's a wonderful woman and very incredible woman, and also the mother of one of my friends, but I didn't know him at the time because he would have been very, very young at the time. Told me, she goes, Ben, did you write a letter? Because back then there was no email or sort of digital media or anything. She goes, it was all handwritten letters, the only correspondence I received. Did you write a letter under an alias saying how good that shoot that you did was? And I'm like, Nancy, of course I did, but it's a genius idea. I wish I would have. But this other thing, I'm like, I'm too busy going out to nightclubs and tearing it up. I don't write letters. I might write my mum a card every now and then because she was living back in the UK. But I'm certainly not going to put pen to paper. I mean, I wish I should have done. I would have written 10. If I'd written 1, I would have written 20.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I want to go. I want to hear about like the cool stuff that happened in Hollywood, because I feel like I've seen some of that. But I first want to, you know, what you've gone through in your career. It was, you know, real film, and then the transition into digital, and then now it's this whole like social media age.
Yes.
But let's like start with, because I know there's so much to your creative process.
There is, but it's still it's pretty basic. I was pretty late to get into the digital era, but once I was into it, I really saw, because I was, you know, I think around 2006. So I know, because a lot of my friends, my contemporaries and, you know, friends then and friends now are photographers. So I was pretty slow to move into the digital era with digital photography. And once I did, there was just no turning back, basically, because the relief of having, and this is getting technical and sort of more sort of photo based, but the relief of having the job in the bag and having a pleased client versus sort of taking the film to the lab and processing it in that moment of question, did it get X-rayed? Did the film get, you never put your film through the X-ray, just stuff like that. There's a lot of, there is, but there those things back then in the film days, you made damn sure they didn't. And then it was an exercise in discipline of just how the protocol and procedure which you use to enforce that stuff like that wasn't happening, and the amount of camera bodies that I have, because sometimes cameras malfunction without you knowing it until you get the film back. So you go shoot one roll on this body one roll on that body. You have it all duplicate or triplicate. Or I had like 6 different bodies constantly rotating that were all,
Wow.
had a number carved into the side, like through a nick that would appear on the roll of film. So if there was a problem with one of the bodies, I'd immediately be able to
Wait,
identify.
can you tell us,
it.
sorry, I don't know the term body. Is it a different camera that you...
Well, so we're looking at your camera here that you're filming now. You see it has a body and a lens. The lens is the optic, like the eye. The body is what holds
so
the...
you're just switching off the lens.
Yeah. So,
cool.
So we'd have duplicate lenses because the lens can also be faulty. This is all very boring technical
It's
stuff.
actually not. I think
But
people
for
would
those
be
people
very-
that are shooting film and film enthusiasts, the likelihood is that they're using one body and one lens. If you're doing a job, then absolutely have 2 bodies, 2 lenses. You probably know it anyway, and yawning at this comment. But for the novices out there, don't approach a paid job with 1 body, 1 lens, because in the slight unlikelihood of it being faulty, you don't want to then go back to your client with faulty film. So anyway, going back to the digital era, late to it. It was very
Late to it, like what year?
I think 2006. I think I got into it 2006. So all my other friends were digital, and a lot of my clients were like, no, were they accepting that I was still shooting film back then? But they were kind of like working with people that were digital based, and the magazines were turning digital, although they would still take film, and scan the negs and stuff. But then it becomes the digital era. That's also pre-social media. It might have been earlier than 2006 because I remember Facebook came around 2006,
Yes,
didn't it? And I joined that, and that was I managed to use Facebook very successfully to my advantage, and
Really?
I do miss it, because
It's
I
still
feel
around.
Yeah, I know, but it doesn't have the same purpose that it did then. What it did was you were able to create photo albums, and a lot of my clients were my friends, so they would go through my photo albums and they would bring that to set as copies of that as inspiration, and there was a massive amount of self-reward in, because I was only taking it because I liked taking pictures and because they were fun photos. But to think then that brands and magazines were inspired by it was like, whoa, and it just fed the beast. And I kept doing it more and more, putting together these albums, and they still exist on Facebook. It actually became like almost like a hard drive or some sort of storage center to catalog my photographs, and every trip I'd go away, I'd do one, and it would be all the people that work with me, because they're my family, and I consider them my family, and it would just be these great trips. We'd create great images for the brand, for the client, for the magazine, and then there would be the other photo shoot of the people working behind the camera and the landscapes and the people that we met on the day of the location scout, or the locals that we met while we were shooting, and that content was, to use the word content, was sometimes some of the most rewarding pictures, because they would live on, and people would use them for inspiration. Now with Instagram, it's much more curated, and they have like with a Facebook album, I think I don't know what the numbers are, but the amount of images you can stuff in a Facebook album are like pretty big, whereas like you can have a carousel of 10. Well, but I got more than 10 photos. Only 10. What if I got more than 10? Okay, 10 it is. Just don't kick me off, please.
Okay, so it's actually really interesting to me that you loved Facebook for the reason that you do these albums that are right here, I
Right.
think, because you were taking stock in these moments, even though you said you couldn't take the moment.
Right.
I think there's so much, and I kind of want to hear the post-production, kind of what sparks you to just go. And I know, we met in Montauk, and I saw your creative outlets.
Well, we met during, during the COVID, the sort of the pandemic experience, where, I had a lot of time on my hands, and
you were working your butt off.
Yeah, I was also working. We put together an interesting package that was able to sort of like create a bit of consumer confidence and like also abide by sort of the safety guidelines that had been put in place, which that was a good thing. But in my free time, which I did have more of, I was one thing about when you're being creative is it's important to remain creative and remain active and remain don't stop and be static. Keep moving all the time. Just keep it as an exercise. Keep exercising your mind. Keep exercising your body as well, for that sake, for that matter. But so I had a lot of time for creative workouts, and I was working out with my scrapbooks like I do, and I had a lot more time to do it. And I went back and looked at old stuff that I wouldn't have done, and it was that was the silver lining on that cloud for me, as well as family, getting to sort of be sort of bunkered down with the family and friends. So it was. There was definitely some plus sides, and so I already did scrapbooks way pre-COVID, but I just had a bit of time to focus, and I had a bit of time to spread out. So it's just a process that has, for me, a lot of self-reward. Going back to those Facebook albums or any albums, there's a lot of time you take pictures for clients and then you edit it differently from what they do. And so the scrapbook gives you an opportunity to sort of creatively put together the photographs that were overlooked or didn't make it in the magazine or didn't make it on the website or whatever. So or never were supposed to, but you took them anyway. So it's just basically a visual diary of
on the walls in the house next door. You had some of the scrapbooks like framed, and just to like give a little preface. We were renting, or I wasn't renting. I was with some friends that were renting your house, and it was the coolest thing. I obviously didn't know Ben at the time, and his art's everywhere. We would be down in the basement, and it was just like stacks and stacks of old photos, whether it was Heath Ledger or like cute butts, like, I don't know, bicycling or something. But I was so, I just gravitated towards this whole scrapbooking, I don't know, outlet of yours.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a creative outlet with a big amount of self-reward, like obviously some celebrities here. And there's a bunch of pictures here of Henry Carvel. Like a lot of these didn't make it in the magazine, but I really liked them, so I got the opportunity to put them together myself. And there's different sort of different scrapbooks with different subjects. Some are more work orientated, some are more family orientated, some are digital, some are film. This one that I had published is one of my biggest creative accomplishments, is putting together this book. This would be one of absolutely a milestone in my career. This book that's basically put together a scrapbook, which is like my urban pictures of the 90s, sort of throughout, sort of here, New York, LA, London. A lot of my travels.
I feel like I just saw Gabby written on the side of one.
No. This was like a long time ago. A lot of the pictures are from the 90s.
Way before.
Yeah. So basically, it's a bunch of shots of just stuff that I took for myself, and there's a bit of work in there too. But something I'm quite proud of.
Most of this is like truly just you going out and taking pictures.
The majority of it is, and then obviously there's a few interesting assignments that are associated with sort of the book's content.
And so like that kind of detail.
Yeah, that's all like my tape and stuff, and how I creatively put things together. Visited the Puerto Rican Day Parade a lot. This was in Hawaii. This was at the Notting Hill Carnival.
I love that.
This was the Tunnel Sunday night when Funk Flex was DJing. Anyone remember the Tunnel nightclub? It's like an incredible nightclub. This was Funkmaster Flex, and that's DJ Khaled when he was, different looking dude.
I love the.
This is actually Just Ski, who's was Jay-Z's DJ. I don't know if he still is, but he's also one of the partners in the brand Illusteva, the sunglasses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's like he was from my era in sort of New York nightlife.
Wow.
This is Omira, big model. She's back doing, I think she was in the Balenciaga show. This is Goldie, big drum and bass artist. I bumped into him at the Notting Hill Carnival. No Limit Soldiers, Notting Hill Carnival. My mate Tux, who was like, me and him used to train together. But bunch of pictures of the Lower East Side.
Wow. So it's a mix of LA and New York.
Yeah, LA, New York, London, bit of Hawaii in there. This was at the Rocksteady reunion, which they used to have up on the Upper West Side. And look, there's a guy from the Beastie Boys there.
So I feel like the 90s still kind of resonates. I mean, even in your apartment.
The 90s was definitely, everybody has their decade, don't they? And I guess the 90s was my.
No, we're not trying to retire you, Ben. We're just saying. I was asking
don't retire.
about.
Please don't do that. But the 90s is coming back in, so that's all good.
1,000%. So you are.
I'm coming
the center
around.
of it.
I'm coming around.
Wait, so I'm looking at your other scrapbook that's right here. Not because we're gonna put this shoppable.
Okay, so these are more. Please put that on shoppable. Yeah.
So we have some Polaroids right here, and so I wanted to, because I remember the first photo shoot that we did in collaboration at the Flower District in New York. I remember. I feel like it's a core memory now of you taking that Polaroid shot, and I was just like, that was a pinch me moment. But I want to know, so you're still taking Polaroids. I want to know what you do with these. Is it just for scrapbooks?
It's just, look, when I go on set or go to take a picture, it's definitely good to use different mediums, just as you guys are here using two different cameras. And Polaroid's definitely a medium that I like to explore with, and I always have done. This sort of, I used to use back in, the 90s again, the Polaroid SX70. I'm going to go get my Can I take a second and go get it?
Yes, go get it. And while he's gone, I want to just show you this cover. This is Gabby from last week's episode with Winston. We got Winston live helping with the direction and production, I think. We also have Gabby in the background.
This is like a Keith Haring edition of. Anyone who doesn't know who Keith Haring is, definitely check out his work, because he's again a great New York street artist that's not with us anymore. This is the other cameras I'm using, sort of for this like mixed media kind of game that I've started playing now, getting a bit nostalgic. This camera is a land camera. It's made by Polaroid. It's a Polaroid land camera. I think this is a 195 or a 180 or a 180. But these are very difficult. And even when I bought it, it's a 195 land camera. I got many of these. It's a pride possession. Thank you. But the film now for this is out of stock and is extremely expensive to source and buy on the internet, or at Brooklyn Cameras. I think they do have some. But I have a bunch of it that I've stored since the 90s, early 2000s. And, I'm using that. Yeah, you go get your camera as well.
Wait, so 195 land camera, that is sick.
A lot of them are automatic functions. This one, everything is in my control. It is fully manual, so I can adjust the aperture and shutter speed to vary the depth of field, and it's just a gem.
Wow, and this is a dinosaur we have here.
Yeah, it is, and feel how heavy that is.
I know, it just looks
feel
heavy.
that.
Oh my God.
That is. I don't know. Is that 2 pounds? Is that 3 pounds?
No, that's like, I think this is like 5.
We should weigh that,
6, 7
because
pounds.
that's not even one of the heavy lenses on it. This is a 90 mil, I think, which is one of my favorite lenses to shoot with this particular format. It's a Pentax 6.7.
So we have an up and coming photographer right here.
Yes.
So, okay, before we wrap this up, I like to ask 2 questions. And Winston, you can chime in here too. So you are on the internet, you have lots of followers, people know you, you've built your career. You've built your career. So, but what I want to know and what people want to know is something that no one from your Instagram profile is going to know about you. Like something that, you know, it doesn't have to be like what happens in the bedroom. It's like, you know.
It doesn't. Oh, because that was, I would have loved to have mentioned something that happens in the bedroom. Well, currently nothing happens in the bedroom because Winston's in the bedroom all the time. So how about that?
That's
you know,
something.
if you're a parent, you're out there, you feel me, you know. If you're a young person with an intimate relationship and enjoy your selfish life, don't have kids.
Amen. Oh, is that a mic drop? Okay, no.
No, that's a joke.
Oh no, Gabby's walking out.
Winston's grabbed the mic. It's got chaotic. What? Hello?
So the last question before we wrap up. Is there, okay, if there was one email that you could wake up to tomorrow, what would that be?
Well, yeah, that's a good, that you know what? I don't know, but what I always say, and I've shared this with Gab, you know, because, you know, New York, you definitely have your highs and lows, but you're always one good email away from feeling down to feeling incredibly up. So if you're having a bad day and you do check it, and because you know, that's something about New York. When you're up, you're up. When you're down, you're so down. You're below down. You know, you're below. So you're only one phone call, email away from a complete mood change and sort of a serotonin rush. So I just say, you know, stay positive, stay focused, stay doing what you do best, keep doing it, and don't keep checking your email box. It'll come when you least expect it.
Okay, well, Ben, I am so grateful that you had us here, you and Gabby. And obviously, your involvement with Rodeo has meant the world to all of us. And we're honored that you are gracing our platform with, you know, your creative energy, and we're so inspired by you, even though, you know, your decade was the 90s. Like we still think you're cool.
Him. Who needs enemies when you got him?
But
well,
thank you.
No, thanks for having me.